Once you get into the good manners habit, you won't even have to think about it. And hey, baby, that don't even rhyme. Welcome back to Deep in Bear Country, a Berenstain Bearcast. I am your host, Bill Gonzalez, and this week, what is rudeness? What is it at all? Is there a definition for rudeness? Do people know what decides rudeness? What decides what is rudeness? Like, I was thinking about that just the other day. What does it mean to be rude? Is there a solid, yes, of course there's a solid definition. It's an ancient concept that goes back as far back as there's been society. There's been the concept of something that's rude. But where does it fall on the spectrum of, like, culturally taboo, hostile? Is it a is rudeness a concept that's grounded in values? Is it hostile? Does it count as a hostile action? What is rudeness? When we say somebody is rude, where does it fall in society? Is it criminal? Is it ethical? What is rudeness? Why rude? Wherefore rudeness? Well, we're going to answer all those questions today. And by all those questions, I mean maybe one of them, maybe a few of them, maybe address them, but I don't know because I'm not an expert on any of this. I'm not an ethics professor. Do ethics professors even teach about rudeness? That's rude. How wooed, as the child would once said on the TV. How wooed. If a child can decide what is wooed, cannot I decide what is wooed? Cannot the Berenstain Bears decide what is wooed? Well, I think the Berenstain Bears are going to decide to take a chance and decide that for us, because this week's book is The Berenstain Bear. That's so rude. As opposed to That Is So Raven, a show that I never watched because it was after my time. I was before that time. I could have watched That's So Raven and been one of those people, but I'm a Gen Xer, not a millennial, so it just, I think I was in college by that point. Did not watch That's So Raven. Did I watch an episode of That's So Raven? Alana, I know you're listening to this. Was that the show we watched, or was that Sister Sister? I can't remember. We watched an episode of something once. I don't remember why. Maybe we were dipping our toe in a generation of which we are not a part. I have no idea. Something that aired on the CW or the WB or UPN or something. One of those networks that came long after I stopped caring about networks because I was a working man with a job. Or I had a VCR, so I was able to, like, rent up some movies and not worry about what was showing on TV at the time. I don't know. I was watching TV. In any case, That's So Rude. How wooed. That is from a show that actually was of my era. I believe Full House. The child said that. The middle child would say, how wooed. And the audience would laugh because you weren't expecting a child to say that. That's not something a child would say, I guess. Obviously a child did say it. And it was scripted. It wasn't like the child just wandered onto set and said that, or wandered into your house and said that. It wasn't like that was something the child wrote either. It was what's the word I'm looking for? It was calculated. It was a calculated effort on the part of the writers to evoke laughter from the studio audience, which is their job. So don't hold it against them. If you're watching a TV sitcom and a joke seems forced, that's fine. That's what jokes are for they're all forced. It's a situational comedy. It's a situation that was created by writers to make you laugh. That's their job. That's their career. They built up their career to create these situations for you. The situation comedy exists for that reason, to entertain and amuse, just like the Berenstain Bears exist to entertain, amuse, and educate about wooedness. So today we're going to look at wooedness, the concept of wooed, what makes something wooed, what makes something not wooed, and who decides. Who gets to, and if something is wooed, are you allowed to get mad about it? Like, is that a thing? Is that a thing you're allowed to do? I don't know. I've been called wooed in the past. I've been called wooed by friends. I've been called wooed worse by girlfriends. And I guess I have to agree. I guess, like, I can't deny that I've been wooed in the past. But what is rudeness? Well, first of all, if you go to the so I looked at it, I was like, is there such a thing as have people studied? Yes, there have been books written about the history of rudeness, which uh I mean, that's if I'd had the time to read a book before I did this, besides the Berenstain Bears book, I would have read this. But I did look up a few things on the history of rudeness. Uh, yes, so there's a book called A Short History of Rudeness: Manners, Morals, and Misbehavior in Modern America by Mark Caldwell, and it covers well, like it says, it's a history of the concept of rudeness. I mean, it goes into modern times, but uh, what rudeness is a reflection of cultural and most likely intercultural competence. Rudeness is also known as effrontery, and it is a display. I'm reading this. It is a display of actual or perceived disrespect by not complying with the social norms or etiquette expected within a relationship, social group, or culture. All right? So you got that. It is actual or perceived disrespect because you're not complying with rules and etiquette that have been established within certain groups. And that can be a group like an insular social group, a cultural group, a national acceptable, like all these different things. And a violation of those norms, whether you intended to or not, is rudeness. You extend beyond rudeness. You start dipping into like obscenities, hate speech, crime, but also forms of rudeness can be alleviated through the concept of what we call, anyone? Joking around or joking. If you are within a social context in which joking is acceptable, then rudeness is acceptable if it in the form of a joke. Now, obviously, there are limits and rules to that, but I think that's where people try to get around hostility, obscenity, violating personal boundaries by using "I was joking" as an excuse, because within certain social groups, that form of joking is acceptable. Oh, you're being rude? I wasn't being rude. I was joking around with my friends. We can call each other names. We can violate certain cultural taboos in our group. That's not rudeness. That's joking around. Now, as is pointed out, the concept of rudeness is subjective and contextual. The examples given on that great knowledge base, Wikipedia, which rings true, are the concept of wearing shoes within the house. In some cultures, to remove your shoes before entering a person's home is expected. And if you don't, that's considered very rude. But in other cultures, to ask a person to remove their shoes upon entering your house is considered rude. There's this, and it's one of those things where you should just, in most cultures, you are expected to follow the rules of the home. So the perception of rudeness goes both ways. Like if you violate the sanctity of the home, you're being rude. But in some cultures, if you are expected to comply with the sanctity of the home against your own culture, that's considered rude. Vulgar language, wearing headphones in the presence of others. I deliberately put my headphones on because I just read this. And I was like, what if I wore my headphones throughout this? I'm kidding. I forgot I had headphones. I always forget I wear headphones throughout the day to block out noise. And I forget I have the headphones on when I start recording. One of his addressing elders by their first names. In some cultures, that's considered very rude. You wouldn't do that. But in other cultures, that's just part of how you do it. So as you can see, there's many forms of rudeness. Now, that's not the form of rudeness we're dealing with today. But before we go on, I just want to say that I mentioned intercultural competence. Part of learning to be to navigate between cultures is to avoid rudeness. And concepts of rudeness are different between, depend on your social role, your gender, your social class, your religion, your cultural identity. Those all affect the appropriateness of a given behavior. And a behavior that is considered perfectly acceptable by one group of people may be considered clearly rude by another. And this is another example that I enjoyed that was given. It says, in medieval and Renaissance Europe, it was considered rude to indicate that a man, I love this. It was considered rude to indicate that a man wearing a mask in public could be recognized. Instead, polite behavior demanded that the masked person be treated as a completely unknown person, and that no one ever attribute the masked person's actions to the individual who performed them. Now, in the modern times, greeting a friend by name while he is wearing a mask or talking to them later about their costume or activities is not generally considered rude, which I was like, okay. I mean, it's just one of those things, right? You don't think about it. If you see someone in public wearing a mask, which, post-COVID, you're more than likely to do, and you're like, hey, Joe is not going to go home later and write, I don't know, a broadside about your behavior. Joe is going to be like, that's fine. Obviously, thank you for recognizing me. I'm your friend Joe. In the mid-20th century, the meaning of eye rolling changed. So it was considered not only rude, but a sign of lust and passion to roll your eyes in the mid-20th century, or before the mid-20th century, and then it became a sign of contempt. Both rude, but for different reasons. But that also explains why in old movies and shows and plays, particularly vaudeville, a person doing rolling their eyes in a certain way meant that you were lustful, interested. You followed your loins as opposed to your mind. So rudeness, that's rudeness. Rude speech can quickly devolve into ethnic slurs. You're not just being rude. This is hate speech. Inappropriate dress and behaviors, obnoxious behavior that can devolve and become assault, like verbal assault, or inappropriate sexual terms. There's all kinds of ways that rudeness can devolve or evolve into bullying, intimidating, straight up lying, aggression, rudeness, which is why we try to nip it in the bud in the first place, which is why we try to say, look, just don't be rude. Don't be rude. It doesn't matter if you mean it or not. If it's perceived as rudeness, hey, baby, that's rudeness. Also, calling somebody baby is rude, which is where we get into today's story. The Berenstain Bears, that's so rude. Is it? Yeah, it is. It's so rude. So let's start talking about. Let's talk about what this book is about. So I read the quote up front. It's not a good poem. I'm sorry, Mike. This is Mike, obviously. Once you get into the good manners habit, you won't even have to think about it, which is funny because this isn't a book about manners. It's a book about rudeness. So already we're a little off base. Also, habit and think about it. Man, that's a stretch. That's Mike. That is at best an internal rhyme, like something you would use to be like, oh, that's clever. That you get this sort of half rhyme in the middle of a song. I can't come up with one off the top of my head, but it's imagine that's linking two lines or thoughts. You're like, okay, I accept that. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a Sondheim-esque rhyme, but it's, I don't know, it's better than a Richard Maltby Jr. rhyme. I'm sorry, Richard Maltby. Is Richard Maltby Jr. still alive? I don't know, but it's I'm not meaning to insane. It's a not Sherwood Schwartz. He's the creator of the Brady Bunch. A Stephen Schwartz-esque. It's a Stephen Schwartz-esque rhyme, internal rhyme. I would give him that. He's not without talent. He's better than Maltby Jr. And he's certainly better than a Tim Rice. It's a Tim Rice rhyme. Look at Tim Rice's lyrics from Aladdin compared to Howard Ashman's lyrics from Aladdin, and you'll see what I mean. Tim Rice, workmanlike. Howard Ashman, genius. I think I've made my point. That's so rude. So what's this book about? Well, sister wakes up in the morning. It's a cold, it's a drizzly day. It's dismal, it's gray. There's a squirrel outside her window. That's cold. Now, you might think this is a story about being kind to your neighbors and letting them in when it's cold outside. Also, why is the squirrel sitting on a branch? We don't know. Squirrels have drays up in the trees to keep themselves warm. They spend all summer and fall preparing for such a time as this. Squirrel, go home. I think the squirrel's a little dramatic. Yuck. Sister wakes up. She's immediately gloomy. One thing I love about this book is it doesn't set up rudeness as like an eternal behavior. Our culprit in this book is going to be Sister Bear, who we know a little more fiery temper-wise than brother, but genuinely a good kid. Genuinely good kid who tries to behave appropriately, who is aware, who is self-aware, who understands what's good and what's bad, what's correct and what's incorrect in public. But sometimes you wake up and it's a bad day, you didn't get a good sleep, and your teeth are set on edge. Right? Like you're immediately like, I'm not about this day. I'm not about it. So she wakes up, she's in a bad mood, and brother's like, what's the matter with you? And he's like, did you get up on the wrong side of the bed? And she's like, yeah, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed and immediately smashed my face into the wall. Thanks for bringing it up, brother. And that's another one. Sister is a wit. She is a clever child. We've seen this from the beginning, from the first action Sister Bear took in her life. Let's flash back to the 1970s, ladies and gentlemen. The Berenstain Bear's new baby. The first thing Sister Bear did upon being born was hit her brother in the face. She punched Brother Bear in the nose. We know that is what happened. So she's a Spitfire, right? She's got attitude. We know that. So if anyone's going to wake up on the wrong side of the bed, it's Sister. We've seen brother in a bad mood as well. We know this isn't like relegated to personality type. But she's a clever wit. The bed is against the wall. If I got out on the wrong side, I'd smash my face into the wall. Hey, it's just a figure of speech, says brother. Well, it's dumb, said sister. Rudely. Right. So sister is already rude. Brother's like, I just asked if you got up on the wrong side of the bed. First of all, if someone wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, don't say that to them. That's rude in and of itself. Give someone a chance to wake up. So what brother has done is he is being rude about sister being in a bad mood. They're siblings. That's what siblings do. But I like how sister's like, yeah, how can I get out on the wrong side of the bed? The bed's against the wall. If I got out on the wrong side, I'd smash my face into the wall. And I say that sister is retaliating immediately by smashing brother's face into the metaphoric wall of rudeness. I think that works. Does that work? I think that works. She shoves him. Sheesh. So brother responds, as children are wont to do, by quoting Art Carney from The Honeymooners. Sheesh, what a grouch, said brother, as sister pushed past him into the bathroom. Sister doesn't just ignore him. She literally grabs his collar, shoves him out of the way. Brother makes a face unlike any scene ever on the face of a Berenstain bear. I love it when Mike experiments with bear faces. He totally experiments with these bear faces because he draws brother in sort of a Picasso-esque, non-Euclidean face. Like, you can see all sides of brother's face and expression and hair in this image. I highly recommend you watch this on YouTube just to see brother's face. I'm showing it right now. Sheesh, what a grouch, said brother as sister pushed past it. And into breakfast. Sister just continues to be a grouch, continues to be rude. Why aren't there any raisins in my oatmeal? She asks. She asks a question no child has ever asked. No child, unless they're asking it in delight. Hey, why aren't there any raisins in my oatmeal? That's awesome. A, no child wants oatmeal. B, no child wants raisins in their oatmeal. And upon seeing there are no raisins in their oatmeal, a child is going to be nothing but happy. Why aren't there any raisins in my oatmeal? You know I like raisins in my oatmeal. She is in a bad mood. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if maybe she's sick. Maybe she woke up with the fever. We should probably check. There's something wrong with sister. She usually doesn't just holler out in the middle of breakfast. Now, it points out that Mama is keeping her temper when she responds that they're out of raisins. And sister says, well, why don't you get some more? Okay, if you've ever had a meal with the Gonzalez Gravitz household, you know that our daughter Mitzi is like this in general, but she's 13, not sister's age. So we know something's wrong. If sister was a teenager, we'd be like, typical teenager. We'd all be a little Irma Bombecky, right? We'd be like, ugh, right? Like that's what Irma Bombeck wrote about. Or am I just thinking there's a Mystery Science Theater joke that's, according to Irma Bombeck, all teenagers are from outer space. So I guess maybe I'm thinking of that. Is that what Irma Bombeck wrote about? I don't know much about Irma Bombeck. I know that the Family Circus kids were really a big fan of hers. After Irma Bombeck died, there was a Family Circus panel, strip, what do you call it? A Family Circus comic that I remember reading when it came out. Because I used to read the Sunday funnies. And the joke, the hilarious gag that Bill Keane saw fit to actually publish nationally in the newspaper was, I think it was like Dolly was reading the newspaper or something, and she's asking her mom, even though Irma Bombeck is dead, we're still allowed to laugh at her stuff, right? Or something like that. Like that was the whole joke. Like that was the joke. Or was it a joke? It was a tribute to Irma Bombeck. Like, and I guess that the idea is like, you could still enjoy someone's work even after they've died. Sure, of course. There's bookstores filled with the writings of the dead. And now that is what Irma Bombeck's collections are. The writings of the dead. But the question, Jolly was like, and I was like, that's not even a joke. It's just a question a child might ask. But a child would not ask that because no child has ever found Irma Bombeck funny because children don't read Irma Bombeck. She didn't write for kids. That's so rude, said Mama. Mind your manners, please. And sister's like, hey, here's another, I like this page. So sister's like, I like raisins in my oatmeal, and I'm just being honest. And Papa said there's a big difference between being honest and being downright rude. I like this. I think this should be printed out and put on the wall of every junior high school in the world, every high school in the world, every office in the world. You can just saying you're being, hey, I'm just speaking my truth, man. I'm just being, yes, you can be honest without being rude. That's true. And I hope children understand that. I hope adults understand that. I'm just speaking my feelings is no excuse for being rude. Now, if you're just speaking your feelings because your feelings are not being heard, because you're not being listened to or taken seriously, no matter how much you speak your feelings, no matter how much you speak your needs, then yes, you may escalate. That is not where sister is right now. Sister's gone immediately to escalation. She's like, there are no raisins in my oatmeal. I am going to be rude about it. And then when I get called out, I'm going to say, hey, I'm just being honest. Honesty is a good policy. However, as Mama points out, and Papa points out, there are ways to let your feelings be known that are not rude, that don't violate the rules and expected behaviors set up in our immediate social grouping. This social grouping being the family of bears who have rules, who have values, and who have methods of behavior that they have known and let be known are acceptable. And they have let them be known through several books. They've let them be known by lists of rules they've made, and they have let them be known through their behaviors. They have set these examples. Now, we also know that sometimes Mama and Papa lose their tempers. So they have violated those rules at times, but they have also acknowledged to the children that those are violations of the rules and they've apologized for them. So sister is not acting in a vacuum. Sister also knows she's being rude, but also she's a child. So a child's behaviors at times will supersede, their impulses will supersede their knowledge of what is acceptable. So a child will know that certain behaviors are unacceptable, but a child also lacks the parts of the brain that allow them to stop those behaviors from coming out. And once those behaviors come out, even if a child is like, even if a child's intellectually aware that what they are doing is unacceptable, that behavior upon being acted upon will become justifiable to the child. The child will be like, this is how I want it to be. My body was telling me, my brain was telling me, my emotions were telling me, my hormones were telling me I have to behave in this way. Therefore, it's the way I needed to behave at the time. And I can't see through that. I also have a brain fog, and the brain fog is called being a child. Parents step in. Mama's not losing her temper. Mama says, you could say, may I have some raisins, please? To which sister responds, but we don't have any raisins. You forgot them, okay? You already said you forgot to buy them. Mama, I thought this was a picture of Mama trying not to laugh. It's actually a picture of Mama gritting her teeth. And through gritted teeth, Mama says, that's true. But when I told you that, you could have said, maybe we can get some the next time we're at the store. This is an opportunity for sister to say, you're right, I apologize. Sister ups the ante. So what sister is doing is she is finding new ways to be rude. Maybe we could get some the next time we're at the store. To which sister responds by muttering, that's silly. Now, if you are a parent, you may have been in this situation where the child is deliberately escalating the situation. We have a 13-year-old. The 13-year-old frequently seems to be deliberately escalating the situation, many times by muttering rude responses to corrections we've just made in their behavior. And by we, I mean Alana, because by this point, I am usually the person who is withdrawing into a shell, a protective shell, trying to avoid the confrontation. Alana has made a corrective statement to the child. The child mutters something under their breath, at which point things escalate even further. Now, interestingly enough, it's Brother Bear who escalates things even further in this situation by gripping the tablecloth, standing on the chair, pointing at sister, and yelling at her, you're silly, because he's fed up with sister's attitude. Now, we know that Brother is genuinely, historically, literarily, Brother is the peacekeeper in the family. Brother does not like confrontation. He does not like to confront people on their behaviors. He does not like to be the person who gets in between people. He's also a ditherer. He thinks things through too much. He over-intellectualizes conflict. He doesn't take action when action needs to be taken. We've seen this behavior in Brother many times. So it's amazing to see Brother push to the breaking point so quickly by causing him to stand on his chair and yell at his sister, you're silly. At which point Papa erupts. My goodness, Papa. This is, 2019 Papa, not 1983 Papa. So he's not banging on the table himself, but he says, my goodness, I've never heard such rudeness. What's the matter with you two? Now, I would say it's more... It would be more fair to say what's the matter with you, sister, than you two. But he's trying for equity here. What's the matter with you two? Brother yells, she got out on the wrong side of the bed. And she says, yeah, and smashed my face into the wall. She sticks out her tongue. Now, you can interpret this any way you want to. I'm interpreting this as sister acknowledging that she got out on the wrong side of the bed and kind of asking for help and saying, I got out on the wrong side of the bed and immediately was in a bad mood. I smashed my face into the wall. I came right up against a conflict that I cannot fix myself. Will someone please help me de-escalate by using these words? I smashed my face into the wall. Now, if my child said that, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed and I immediately smashed my face into the wall, I would say, aha, the child is analyzing their behavior. The child is saying, please, will someone help me de-escalate? Unfortunately, no one has the opportunity to de-escalate because Honey Bear throws her oatmeal on the floor and yells, smash! Now, Honey Bear is a little child, does not understand what she's doing. Honey! So Mama then escalates the situation by grabbing Honey Bear, whisking her out of her seat. Like she grabs her under the arms and yanks her out of her chair. Instead of, we're seeing an escalation. So brother and sister climb onto the table and start hurling names at each other. Furball, possum face. Honey crawls under the table to start eating the oatmeal off the floor. Papa starts shouting for manners. Mama is just surveying the scene in dismay, as Mike says. So we see everything has now gotten out of hand. Finally, she goes over to the sideboard and grabs the dinner bell, something I, as a longtime Berenstain Bears reader, did not even know existed. There's a dinner bell. Mama grabs it and starts just clanging the dinner bell, right? It's a huge bell. She's clanging it. Everyone stops talking. And I'm going to say, that's a good way to de-escalate, right? No one's expecting you to pull out the bell. And she sternly tells him that she's never seen such a display of rudeness in her whole life. And I love this. Mama Bear says, quote, "I'm actually embarrassed to be related to any of you." Now, we've seen Mama lose her temper before. We've seen Mama escalate into a disgraceful display of rudeness before. We've seen Mama throw all the children's toys in the trash before. So Mama, glass houses and all of that. However, I do like her approach. I'm embarrassed to be related to any of you. And fair. We'll be getting to the Berenstain Bears family tree very soon. I'd be embarrassed to be related to many of them. Sister starts protesting. She's like, look, I've had a bad day. And Mama's like, look. And okay, so sister's like, I had a bad day. I felt grumpy. And Mama's like, you know what? It's really easy to be polite and have good manners and be pleasant and be a good person when you're in a good mood. The challenge is to be polite. And I'm going to disagree with this a little bit. Pleasant. I don't like the term pleasant. That sounds like you're forcing your, like you're, I don't know. There's something about telling a child to be pleasant when they're in a bad mood that doesn't help. But Mama is making a point, which is like, look, the point is we have rules, we have expectations, we have values that can't simply be put into action when everything's going perfect. We can't expect people to be decent people only when everything is working out for them. Sometimes the sun is not shining. Sometimes it is rainy and gloomy. You wake up in a bad mood. But there are certain expectations we have societally that you need to do just for us to exist. This is the crux of the Berenstain Bears world. You have to respect other people, even if you don't feel like it's a good day for you. This doesn't mean I would go so far as to say this doesn't mean you have to be Little Mary Sunshine. It doesn't mean you have to be Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, right? It doesn't mean you have to be Anne of Avonlea, right? You don't have to behave that way, but you have to respect people. You have to put that basic human decency first by not hurling your mood at others. Like I think that's like your basic, I think what Mama is trying to say. What she is saying is, it's easy to be pleasant and have good manners when the sun is shining and everything's going well. The challenge is to be polite and pleasant to everyone when things are going badly. Which that's a behavior you have to learn. That's not something that comes naturally. And brother hurls an invective at sister. And brother's like, look, she started it. And Mama says, and you continued it. Rude is rude, start to finish. The kids apologize to each other. Honey doesn't really understand what's going on, so he says, I'm sorry I called you furball, and Honey yells, furball, and starts laughing, and that's when Papa's like, look. And this is nice. So Papa tries not to laugh when Honey says that, which is true. When a child says a swear, always funny. How rude. But he does say, look, you set a bad example for your little sister. And he's like, let's go outside and take a walk. Let's clear the air. And she's like, but it's literally sleeting outside. And Papa, acknowledging their species, says, what's a little sleet to a bear? They are covered in fur. They go out for a walk in the sleet, and Sister Bear slips and falls because the stairs are slippery. Honestly, this is dangerous, walking down sleety stairs. Brother almost laughs, but he knows that it's rude to laugh at someone who's fallen. So he helps her up. Sister Bear fell on her butt, and she says, oof. Just a little hurt in my pride. They all laugh because they know she means butt. They look at the trees, everything's sparkling like diamonds in the sleet as the sun comes out through the clouds. And they're like, you know what? We're having a little bit of a sleet storm. We're having a bit of an ice storm. It's actually kind of pretty outside. Let's find the beauty in the world. They go off and take a walk. They're all polite to each other. It's all good. But what I like isn't that they found beauty in the sleet. What I like is that sometimes, you know what? You got to take a walk in the rain. Sometimes you got to take a walk in the sleet. Sometimes you got to take a walk in an ice storm. Sometimes you go outside and it's not nice out. Sometimes you wake up and the sky is gray, but that doesn't mean you have to be cruel to each other. It doesn't mean you have to be rude. As we learned by looking at the definition of rudeness, at the history of rudeness, at what it means to be rude, we learned that rudeness means you're violating the societal, the cultural, the accepted behaviors that you should be aware of. Whether or not you're aware of them, it's still rudeness. What sister has done is she has violated the values, she has violated the behavior, she has violated the expected behaviors of her family in their very small social group. And when corrected, she simply doubled down. So the rudeness grew and grew and grew. What we also know from looking at the definition of rudeness is that rudeness can escalate into hostility, into like cultural violence, into just all kinds of things, like these morally dubious, morally questionable behaviors that you can then attempt to excuse by saying, well, I didn't know, or I was just joking around, or but they started it. And the excuses we use for rudeness can become excuses for other behaviors, more vicious behaviors. And so what Mama and Papa and Mike Berenstain and I, to a degree, try to do is say, look, just treat others the way you want to be treated. The golden rule thing. It's Mike's definition of community. It's being a good person. It's the definition of goodness. It's that not only treat others the way you want to be treated, but approach other people as if they are beings worthy of respect. It doesn't mean you have to respect people who aren't worthy of respect, but start from that assumption. People are worthy of respect. Let them behave the way they're going to behave. But you yourself can be a respectful person regardless. Don't be a pushover. But if we start from a basis of respect, then we won't get into a fight over rudeness. And that's the Berenstain Bears That's So Rude. And it was. That's so rude. It's a fun book. And I think it's a good place to start with conversations with children about rudeness. Because these are kids behaving like kids. This isn't Too Tall behaving this way. It's not Cousin Fred behaving this way. It's our main characters. It's our microcosm. It's our family. Our Berenstain Bear family behaving this way. It's rude. And we won't stand for it. The Berenstain Bears That's So Rude. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening. This book is not available digitally, by the way. You got to go out and buy a copy. I own a copy. I don't know where it is, but I own a copy. Had to grab some scans of it just to use for this YouTube showing. But yes, this book is available to purchase. You just got to buy it in physical paperback. So yeah, but go out and buy it. It's a good book. I like it. I enjoyed this one. Berenstain Bears That's So Rude. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening. This is Phil Gonzalez. As always, I am here talking about bears. Catch me on YouTube talking about bears in the same manner. Just you can see me. You can see the books behind me. You can see my little studio setup if you want to. And you can see me as I go through the book. I show pages from the book. So if you're interested in that, find me on YouTube, Phil Gonzalez. It's Phil. You can search Deep in Bear Country and the titles of the books if you want. You'll find me. I'm out there. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Then you'll always know. I'm not making money off this, but it's fun. So anyway, thank you so much I've already said this a billion times, for listening. And I'll see you all next time, deep in Bear.